Hello, hello.
All right, here we go. Tip number 3.
Yes,
Lord have mercy, y'all.
we're solving the world's problems. Oh no, did I freeze?
Well, today I would actually to do what
Uh
we
oh.
actually.
I flipped to my Wi-Fi.
Okay, so
You're
here,
you're cutting in and out, Royal Star. You're, we can't hear you because you're cutting in and out.
all right, so I just tapped into the
There we
Wi-Fi
go.
here, so we'll see if that's better.
There we go.
Okay, we
That
just tapped
sounds
into the
better.
Wi-Fi
Yes.
here, so we'll see if.
Sounds better. Yep.
All right, all right.
It's not
So
funny the other way.
today, my peoples, this is the third attempt. The goal here is this is eager. This is not the Royal Star account. This is the eager account. The goal is for European Americans to be talking to other European Americans and to model what anti racism looks like, European American to European American. It is beautiful that our Black brothers and sisters want to come on to validate or for it's few
Chilling.
spaces where we actually see European Americans trying to hear what Black people are saying, right? That's rare. It's so rare that when those spaces are created, Black people flock to those spaces. Today, I would like to moderate European Americans talking about their experience with the pain of whiteness in the 39th day of this Trump administration. Okay, please, my people. I feel like Iron Sheik. Please, Bubba, please. Okay, all right. This is the third attempt. Okay, it appears to me, and I'm gonna go up and down because my phone isn't charged. I was expecting this to be at 11 my time instead of 10. So here goes. Oh my goodness. All right.
Oh, I'm
How,
early.
you're good. You're good. How the question on the table right now, before we get to some of the more substantial, is how is everyone handling the existential crisis of the Trump administration? Meaning that what is happening at the national level is actually affecting you as an individual. And if it isn't affecting you at the individual level, how is that possible? And
I know
somebody's
for
gonna have to moderate
myself.
these comments. Pardon self. Also, somebody's gonna have to moderate these comments because there are a lot of people who are in their feelings and they come into the comments and European Americans are rude to each other when it comes down to
Where are
race.
we ever? Yes, indeed.
Gotcha.
I know for myself. I go from my immediate knee jerk reaction is run, 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 or hide, run or hide, and then I stop myself like when the hi when I sorry, because I have a queer kid, and so my first reaction was get my baby to safety, and only care about my child and my family. And then as I was listening to other communities talk, I was like, hang on, Sarah. This is where your privilege needs to come in because you can stay in a spot that is more precarious because I am in a red state. I can stay here a little bit longer than other people. And so if I stay, I can fight a little bit more than just running. But my first reaction was to cut and run as quickly as possible. But yeah, I don't know if that's been anybody else's experience.
Okay, so I've got some corollary questions. Okay, so
Yes,
let's stay here with me. And then other
I'm
people, I
here.
think, because it seems to me that the very idea that you can run away from white people is insanity. How can you run away from yourself? Like,
Yep.
if you can't see, how do you protect yourself from white people? That's what blows my mind. It's like the fact that European Americans can think of themselves in that way to where it's white racial innocence and yeah, okay, my family is queer. You guys don't like queer people or you don't like me. I can protect myself from white people. How? The only way you can protect yourself from white people is to run to black people, to run to another community. Am I right or am I wrong?
You are not wrong. And even in running, it was always it was a leapfrog. It was, I'm going to first find a way to a blue state and then find my way out of this country and away from my people, because my white people are dangerous. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
That's why
okay.
I said I got to stop and not run, because my initial reaction is to run and to get to my own place of comfort, make sure I'm safe, make sure my family is safe, right? That's the first knee jerk reaction. And then I recognized the white supremacy that was coming through in that thought. And I had to stop myself and say, nope, I'm trying my best to build community. And how can I build community if I abandon them at the very first sign of danger?
I'm oh my God. Right. So help me out. This is now Vix and Robert. Um, how can European Americans not view themselves as the problem? Meaning, you're running to another community, but you're still white. Meaning that you're bringing the danger with you. You're not innocent of the danger. You're bringing the danger with you. What other country can you go to that's going to be safe? Meaning, if you go to Europe, you're now just going from the being the kettle that's got the hot water coming out to the very fire that started everything. That's the I'm lost.
So I've had a lot of people express the same sentiment that Sarah has said to me specifically. I don't know how you can run because everywhere you go, there you are. Um, and I'm constantly coaching people not to leave. You know, like what are we running from, and what are we running to? Um, we have to we need to stay and fix our community.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, it's our community that needs fixed.
What are we going to do? Run to Canada and still do nothing against the
Right.
oppression and the racism that's happening in Canada? What are we going to do? Run to, somewhere in Europe and still do nothing to address the oppression and things that are
Right.
happening over there? That's the
We've got a
white
comment here
supremacy.
that says,
That's just
my
the
whole
obvious
family is
layer.
Mormon.
Yeah, that's just
Yeah.
the obvious layer of white supremacy that we bring with us
Hmm.
when we flee like that. Is, well, we're going to come here and we're going to try to hide in our comfort and not do nothing.
Yep.
Right.
Well, we always think we're the exception, right?
Hmm.
We don't see it in our side of ourselves unless you start to actually do the work and realize how deeply ingrained it is within us. And I am I'm a not, maybe not a baby on this journey, but I am definitely still new and still
Yeah.
slip up. But I am getting closer and faster at catching myself, um, because I'm not run. I am still here, but but the first reaction was the first reaction, and I think that that is something that a lot of people can relate to. I mean, I was talking last night with a gentleman who lives in Idaho, and he mentioned that he feels like he doesn't have any power. He's like, but I said, do you not understand that you are the most powerful person? You really are, because you are a Christian, cisgendered, heterosexual white man who is wealthy. You are all the things. And if you can feel that power that you have, you're going to be the most effective one. But he's like, but I'm all alone. And what am I going to do? How am I going to fix this? And that's where we have to, I planted the seed. I said, there's others of you in Boise. There's more of you in Idaho. You're all just feeling alone because we have been isolated and told that individualism is best and the only success you have is in your family unit. And if you have to reach out to others, you're a failure. And that is something that we have to deconstruct and work through.
Okay, so this person, you were gonna do a quote, Vix?
Oh, yeah, there's some comments in here. Marissa says, my whole family is Mormon. I've had to cut many of them off due to different humanitarian views. I haven't cut off the ones who are able to have important convos, but I don't engage with most.
So, Mike, that's a corollary question. Why does she believe she has different values? Per the conversations that we've had, if European Americans are all about their individual personal comfort, isn't that the value? It isn't humanitarian values. You're saying that you have a different intellectual idea. And so you need agreement to your intellectual idea, but you're not changing any behaviors to where that value is being expressed through you. Because otherwise, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in if there were enough European Americans in the roles, in the jobs, in the positions that they find themselves in, choosing to live up to their value. Like what you just got through saying, Sarah, that the European American man had internalized that he, even though he's at the top of the racial caste system, he himself doesn't have any power. Why do European Americans believe that they will be obliterated by other European Americans?
I was actually thinking about this today because of your stitched video. Sorry, dogs. They get really loud when they come downstairs. You stitched a video from Michael. Sorry, last name.
Matthew
Reynolds. Yes. And as I was watching, because he talked about when are we going to fight against white terrorists, and it brought to mind 3 separate instances that I have witnessed in the last 39 days. The Coeur d'Alene one, which of course is on everybody's mind. In my own state, there was a white supremacist group that marched in front of a town hall without anybody saying anything. And then my own town hall that I went to, where there was a police officer right there that my representative waved over anybody whenever anybody just spoke loudly at him or looked at him weird. There is a fundamental belief in white people that the system is going to work, that the checks and balances are going to work, that we have such belief that if you follow the rules, then you will not be hurt. And the fact is, the system is not for us. And there is going to be a very rude awakening for so many people who I can't even imagine the women who watched that woman be dragged out and didn't act. If they heard the reaction of Black women who have been watching that, if that was me, I would have been shook to my core, because why I would be asking myself, why didn't I do anything? What's wrong with me? Why didn't I say something? Why didn't I stand up? Why didn't I lock arms? Why didn't I fight? Why didn't I do anything? I was frozen.
Can I tell you why that didn't happen?
I need you to show your face.
How do I change my visual? This is my business platform, so that's why it's a paleta in the middle.
Okay.
I'm a brown Mexican.
Pause. Excuse me. Pause.
I'm sorry.
Wait.
Pause.
Apologize.
Hey,
Yes.
please, you're gonna have to go on. You have to click onto it. There's a video
Okay.
thing that usually is crossed out. Click on
Okay.
that video.
Okay. I'll hit it.
Please do
See
that
me now?
before you talk. Before you talk, be
Yes.
brave enough, like everybody else. Show your face.
There
Thank
we
you.
go.
There you go. There you
That's
go.
me.
All right.
Sorry. I've
Yeah.
never done that
So,
before. I
all right,
apologize.
you're good. And right now, what we're doing is we are not explaining the why. We're talking
No.
about the internalization. This is a conversation because we tried, this is the third attempt to try and do this, okay? So we're not doing the intellectual agreement. We're saying right now, our European American friends and family are facing the existential crisis of what it means to be white in the United States of America, the psychological pain. So what we're looking to do is articulate that psychological pain. And currently what's on the table is what Sarah just said. She imagines, and millions of European Americans imagine in individualism, that when you receive feedback from Black, Brown, and Indigenous persons, there's an internal process that occurs inside of white people. That is not something that Black, Brown, or Indigenous persons of color experience when we interact with white people. They don't seem to have the intellectual experience that Sarah is hoping that someone who receives the feedback from social media would have. Could you now explain why that does not occur?
And the reason what I was gonna say is I think when marginalized communities, we are so based on community. We are not separate from one another. And I had to have this discussion with my son because he was talking about school, and I said, look, and this may not relate to anybody. Growing up, my parents told me I wasn't special. Not in the sense because they didn't love me. They told me I wasn't special because they meant it in a way of everybody around you is going to go through some hardship. You're not the only one that's going to go through hardship. And the minute you start to think you're special, that means you put yourself in a situation of being alone. And when you put yourself in being a situation alone, you start to think that nobody else is going through that and it can't affect you. And when you have that mindset of individuality, you can't go and help anybody else, and you only think that you can help yourself. And that's the separation. That our community, we don't have that. And also, like, I feel too, this is a very nuanced feeling for those that are feeling, maybe white people are feeling oppressed in a way. I can't speak for that.
Pause. I'm sorry. Forgive me. I'm not trying to cut you off and be mean. This is our third attempt. That's what we just got through. What you're saying is what we did day 1 and day 2. Okay?
Okay.
I can't do this for day 3. What I want to
No.
know is what's going on inside of white people to where they can't hear what you just said. They can intellectually say, yo, I want that, but I can't do it. And that's what we're talking about here
this is where I'm landing my plane, is because they've never had to experience organization. Like in that situation of that woman being dragged away, that wouldn't have happened not only because we would have jumped in the community, but we would have been organized.
Okay, yes. That's
We
what
don't
we
have
said
that
on day
situation.
1, and that's what we said on day 2.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes,
I guess
that's what
I'm
we've already.
missing what
Yeah,
we
that's
need.
what we've
Okay,
already.
I'll
This is
take
going
it
to be
down, I guess, because I'm not.
Right.
Yeah,
But
I
but
think
what's happens
honestly and
is
truly,
go ahead.
can I
Sarah.
just speak to all the beautiful Black and brown people? This is going to be hard for you guys to sit through. This is going to be so hard for you to listen, because you're going to be you're like, I don't understand what is wrong with you people. And we're going to say, like, and from me, because I've been on a little bit further on this journey, I'm going to be like, I know what is wrong with us, because I completely understand. I know that we should have been able to organize. I know that we should have had a collection. I know that we should not see myself as special. I also know that I was raised being told that I was saved for these days, for these latter days, because my soul was special before I was born. I was here to save the world. So when you tell me that you were told you were not special, I was told the exact
And I understand
opposite.
that. And I think that's
So
where
it
the
is a
breakdown is.
completely different type of growing up and a completely different mindset. And so these conversations are so painful because you guys feel like you're like, just see it.
And
And I'm
that's
like,
my point.
I know.
That's my point of landing, is that YT people think that they're special. And guess what? You're not. Period. And that's why all of this is going to affect you also. And good luck trying to figure it out, because it's going to hurt you hard, because you have lived your life thinking you're so special. And you got to get that mindset around you're not. You're not special. That's where I wanted to land my plane. Sorry.
Thank you for landing your plane. As we move forward, please, we're trying to get European Americans to articulate the pain that they are feeling. Okay? We can see the contrast. They are hearing the contrast. What I am very concerned about, because this is Eager's page, this isn't Royal Star's page. What I'm really concerned about is our European American friends and family being able to look at, I still feel, even though I heard what you said, I don't feel any connection to another white person, and I don't know why. Because that becomes the existential crisis. Why do you not feel a connection to other white people? Because that means that you are just as dangerous as that other white person if you are walking around as if you cannot see and feel said connection. So what is it? What's your name, bro? The new guy came on.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name's Ed. Thank you for
All right,
inviting
Ed.
me up.
All right.
So I have no connection with other people of my pigment because my life experience tells me that I can't trust them, right? My life experience, my lived experience tells me that not a single person that is of this complexion has been there for me at a time when I needed them most, right? Every single time. There is a condition, there is a transactional nature to all of the relationships that I've ever engaged in. And those things, those are the reasons that I'm so disconnected from my community and why I've never been able to stay engaged with any community that I've been connected to. Because I am the inverse of that. I am the embodiment and representation of betrayal in society. And I own that on a very deep level. And so I hold myself off from connection because I've got a lot of internal stuff that is tied up into all of that. And so not only do I not want to be harmed by other people that are like me, but I also don't want to harm them. And because I know I have that capacity, it is implicit in me to be self-serving. My consciousness of that does not negate the existence of that. And so I'm in this place of isolation and hold myself here.
Wow. Wow.
That's why you need to join Eager. That way you're not alone.
I hold myself apart. I hold myself apart.
Wow. Okay. Well, I want to thank you for being vulnerable and stating that, because you are not alone. There are a number of people who feel betrayed by those that look like them. And I think that you're trapped in the oppressor class. So you're aware of your being in the oppressor class. You don't want to be a part of the oppressor class. And you still take all of the reputation of the oppressor class with you in every environment that you go into. So when you go to visit with Black, brown, indigenous persons of color, They can't treat you like a human being the way that you want to be treated. They can treat you better than white people are treating you, but you still have this thing that you can call on called 911 and activate your community against Black, brown, indigenous persons of color. Because from what I can observe, millions of European Americans are a part of a community against their will, against their will. They just don't like their community, which is what you articulated. I can't trust them to be by my side unless we are harming other people. Then we form like Voltron and hurt those people. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yes,
Right.
that's
And if we're
absolutely
not
right.
willing to become part of Voltron, we become space dust.
From other white people. Other white people hurt you then.
Yes. And I'd like to offer Ed some words, if I may, just for a moment. You are not alone. You are not alone. And some of the things that you expressed there, I just want to tell you, you're definitely not the only one feeling them and thinking them and living through it. And I want to take just a moment to focus on when you said that you don't want to harm other people. I'm not going to speak for you. I'm going to speak for me because I experienced some of the same feelings. And it's more so that I don't want to be put in a position where I feel like or I believe that I don't have a choice but to harm other people.
I see what you're saying. I think I understand what you're saying, and because of
I'm not
okay,
sure I am. Can you say more about that last bit there so I
Well,
can understand
I'll be
better?
straightforward with it because if we don't figure out how to build a pathway out of white supremacy culture, because there's not one, we have to build one. If we don't figure out how to do it through nonviolent methods and through love and community and understanding, it is inevitable that we will repeat history. And I will not be on the same side of the line as people who look like me.
well, you already aren't on the same side, right? You
No,
already aren't on the same side.
that's true, but I think
So,
you know what I mean. So that's what I mean by
well,
I don't want to be in a position where I feel like harm is like it's either them or me.
so part of the
Yeah.
struggle is the hard, fast line, right? Part of the struggle is the hard, fast line, because life is situational and conditional. And I have to make situational and conditional judgments while having clear understandings of my own personal standings on in certain things. So these gray areas of life bombard us all the time. And if we don't have clarity on where we are, who we are, and what we are, then all of that becomes more and more confusing and much harder to be able to stand up and exercise a voice if I don't have clarity on what my voice is trying to say. You know?
Can I just say that I appreciate your vulnerability and um, your clarity in how you're feeling because it really hit me in a spot, and I appreciate that so much.
Thank you. And I just want to emphasize that I started following you back in 2019. Not you, Eager, but Royal Star. And it's only from following you, in addition to the tools that I had developed on the way to meeting you, but since following you and trying to embrace your teaching and implement your perspective and understanding, has helped me come to here where I am today with all of you.
Wow. Thank you. Asante Sana. Ramadan Mubarak. I believe the appropriate term is all praise is due to Allah. Um,
Beautiful.
so,
Hi,
with
Bill.
that said, the next question I have is what words describe the existential crisis that European Americans are in at the present moment, where, as I've heard originally from Vix shortly after the election, the the deficit of trust, meaning that, as you articulated, European Americans don't trust each other to be present. Like, it's always transactional. And if it isn't money on the line, the power that allows you to be safe, which means, and that power is deference. You have deference from each other and from Black, brown, indigenous people of color because of the threat of violence that's in your hand. How do you manage the existential crisis that you, by virtue of your skin, are associated with harm and violence? And the only way, like Robert was articulating, the only way that seems to be able to separate yourself from that is the people that you see that are causing the harm, whether it's be through legislation, through public policy, through speeches. You seem to have to look at them and tell them that if you don't stop, I have to be harmful towards you, which means you look no different than them.
And that's exactly what they're afraid of too. So it reinforces not having community, because then they can't trust us either.
Absolutely. They know that we don't have any ultimate tools other than harm. And they don't either.
That's a result of a society driven by force, right?
Mm-hmm.
Might
Absolutely.
makes right.
Yes.
Or at least it
That
stops you
is
from
the
hurting me in the
principle
immediate.
of
It
force
won't make
behind the
right, but
whole
it keeps you
society.
from hitting
That's
me in the
why
immediate.
laws can be disregarded. That's why. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought
You just
somebody
froze
was saying
on us.
something.
Yeah, go ahead. That's why laws can be disregarded.
I maybe have it. Yeah, that's why we live in a society today where laws can be disregarded, because they don't really apply to some people. And the fact that right by might, or might makes right, is the driving force behind the society. That's why people are paralyzed in fear right now, because no one wants to experience pain or discomfort or suffering or loss. And that is a very real potential of what direction we're heading. And that causes paralysis.
Yep. I don't remember
Absolutely.
the person who made the quote, but the quote goes along the lines of, if the penalty for a crime is a fine, then it's not really a crime if you can pay the fine.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
but the very fact that it's fine-based is European culture. So there's a book called The White Man's Burden by Winthrop D. Jordan. Came out in 1971, and it goes over the cultural roots of racism, meaning what was going on in Europe, what was going on in England, that the colonists brought over as their values to form the racial caste system. That's why I bring that book out. And I've done readings from that book. I've done teachings from that book to let our European American friends and family know that if you don't heal here, wherever you immigrate to, you're going to bring the exact same oppressive system of, I need to feel safe at all times, and it doesn't matter how you feel. That's
Yep.
the difference.
Even if we travel back to the old country, same thing. Same thing.
Right. So to me, that's why Brene Brown, Robert Greene, and Jordan Peterson, their teachings on compassion and empathy and what it means to be human, don't seem to help you guys get out of the racial caste system. Because without the deference that is given to you by white racial violence, none of this works. Your worldview
Yeah.
is literally predicated on there has to be tremendous violence happening in our society in order for us, black who are being oppressed, to bow down to you and maintain your right to comfort.
Stone says, "Don't get me started on Jordan Peterson."
He is brilliant in being able to recreate Thomas Jefferson's worldview. That's when I look at Jordan Peterson, listen to Jordan Peterson, all I hear is Thomas Jefferson and the Enlightenment, right? So I don't feel safe, and if I don't feel safe, none of you can feel safe. That's literally what it comes down to, and that is a value from the Magna Carta. The way that the divine right of kings was mitigated in England is the Magna Carta. Go look it up. It's basically the king can't do anything to a peasant that the peasant can't do back to the king. And that is exactly how Jordan Peterson defines equality. He says, if you can do something to me that I can't do immediately back to you, inequality is happening, when that's not true. That is a lie. But it's very transactional, and it's very, you can measure it as action and reaction. So literally saying, I can't react to you. I have to just bow down to your authority. That means now I am terrified that you're going to hurt me, and I can't defend myself. And I'm looking at the group do it. So that's what we saw at the town hall, which is European Americans literally standing there and maintaining their own social contract with each other. So the question becomes, again, and we're going toward it, but what are the words that you guys can craft for that paralysis, that buy-in to white supremacy, that awakening of, oh my God, yes, Sarah, they hear the reaction, and the only thing they can do is say, I don't feel safe to do anything. I feel alone. Even though I was in that group and you guys saw me as a part of that group, that's wrong. And if you keep telling me that, I'm going to pull out my gun and I'm going to hurt you. And I'm going to stop you from saying that to me. Because that's what seems to be the psychological pain of being seen as the oppressor. And now I'm scared that you're going to hurt me because you see me as the oppressor.
And in the big picture of being that terrified of a community you're supposed to be able to depend on.
Yep. And the really weird thing about it, one of the 9 million weird things about it, is something that Kokai has pointed out many times in conversation, is that without the presence of Black, brown, and indigenous peoples of color, most of us are incapable of even seeing that dynamic happening, of even seeing that we're doing it.
But I think most of us can, even before like coming into Eager and all of this, we probably said things like, I don't like people, or I don't trust people, over and over and over again through their life, and they're meaning their people.
Correct. Right. Because you can, because of the white racial violence, you can, that's what Taz was making reference to, you can find Black people as a safe place because Black people have to treat you like a human being. Whether we feel like doing it at that time or not, we have to treat you like a human being. Otherwise, you can call 911 and get us killed. So, as many Black anti-racism content creators have stated, it's Dr. compassion at the force of a gun. It is not legit. So now, back to what Taz was saying about you being able to change the definition of a word. It's all based on you are limited by your right to comfort. So yes, for change to occur, you have to feel vulnerable. You have to feel like everything is about to hurt me, that I'm going to lose everything, which is why I say racial trauma centers are needed, where you go to grieve your sense of loss. Grieve your sense of loss because you are going to be vulnerable to everyone's
Okay, Chucky,
emotions.
thank you.
That's what it seems like. And that's literally, even when you're being treated well, you're going to feel vulnerable that they're going to hurt me in any given moment.
Yes.
So how do you soothe the white nervous system? Because that's been the number one thing. The white nervous system is in fear and flight at almost all times, and it's vibrating like that. And the only time it feels safe is when it breaks a black body, it can hear the cries of a black person, because then they know where the black person is. Otherwise, it's the fear that I'm about to get killed silently. I don't know where I'm safe. I don't know where I'm safe. I don't know where I'm safe. And that's epigenetic from colonial times. Am I right or am I wrong?
Oh, no, you're right. In through Eager, we're working on that, but it is still a big challenge. It's still a hurdle in Eager to um, trust one another. I can see it in other people. I can see it myself, and it like I don't know who said it down here, but someone said, "Oh, Medusa." She said, "You have to lean in and through," and you do. You have to. What's up, Bajorn? Oops.
Okay, I do have a couple of thoughts about this condition of being a white person. I think a lot of it comes from we changed the definition of empathy. I think when white people say empathy, they think, oh, I can relate to the feelings that these other people are having, right?
Mm-hmm.
I lived as a Buddhist monk for like 3 years, and during that process, I learned the real like concept of interdependence and no self, where I had to tear down the idea of me as an individual self and incorporate the self as the other people around me. Like the problem with the peasants versus the king is they're seeing them as separate people when they are really the same. They are us and we are them. Like that's real empathy, is the erasing of those divisions between us, that binary thinking, which I think was first created by or was reinforced by Rene Descartes, who created the Cartesian divide that said, I think, therefore I am. Therefore, the only thing I know that exists is me because I am thinking, and everything that is like coming from the outside is an illusion. It's like the ultimate division between you and everybody else, because nothing else actually exists. The only thing that exists is you mentally, and I think that is the root of white culture, is that division, that schism between us and nature and everybody else as being an extension of ourselves. And I think that's where a lot of that loneliness comes from, is because we don't have that innate connection that like other cultures have always had. Um, yeah, and
I agree with you. What word, what concept? Because that realization of, oh my God, I don't know how to connect. Am I alive? Yes. Am I interacting with you, black person? Yes. And I am waking up to the idea of the definition of human that you are using is not the one that I'm using. And I don't seem to be able to grasp that that what you're doing. I can't match
Young
you.
people call it NPC. Young folks call it.
Oh,
They call us
my God.
NPCs. I've heard this term
That's
before
cold-blooded,
that.
man. Okay,
I know,
so
but it's what they say.
right. So it seems to me that that's the existential crisis of, I hear what you're saying, which is what we were doing. We had 160 people paying attention to black people beating up on white people yesterday. But when it comes down to white people having to actually sit down with the feeling, because it's easy to watch some white person get beat up rather than sit down and say, God damn it, I can't feel it. I mean, I can talk about it all day long, but I really can't feel it.
I could talk about
Hi,
like
Dr. Josh.
my personal story about the feeling of this transition of learning empathy. Um, but it comes from a very personal perspective. I don't know if that's what we want to do.
Yes.
Um, so it was in 2015. I had my then pregnant wife was hit and killed by a car, right? And in order to deal with that kind of trauma, I went to Buddhism because I couldn't find the answers in psychology and how to deal with that grief and that suffering. So I went to Buddhism because I knew they were all about how to cope with suffering, how to find balance and inner peace. And so that's what took me on that path was that initial that traumatic event, and that event also opened up a world of empathy where suddenly everybody who was being hurt, I saw on the news, every person, even the animals I saw on the road, they suddenly were my wife, that had been killed, every bit of roadkill and everything. And that opened up a whole world of connections that I then used Buddhist practice to cultivate and foster and build upon to learn compassion in a new way. And it's hard, and I'm not sure how to help other white people come to that level of compassion without them also personally experiencing that level of trauma.
I'd like to thank Bjorn first for being vulnerable here and sharing with us because it helps. It does help. And I appreciate what you share. I'm really not going to try to offer you any feedback right now because I think I need to understand it a little better before I can speak to any of it. But I would like to take a moment to address some of the conversation about empathy, some of it in the comments, some of it we've done here. I'm not saying, hey, that's wrong and this is right, but I want to offer, for me, to understand what I believe empathy is, I have to go back to the definition of things that I knew when I was a child. Before I read it in a dictionary, before I studied it, when I was just learning words, and I learned the difference between sympathy and empathy. And sympathy being, you can kind of you've experienced something similar, you can feel the same thing, or you can understand how that feels. And empathy was, I'll skip to the later definition before I come back to the punchline. You have actually experienced that thing before, and you have had those feelings before. I think that's where we changed the definition of empathy to that, because that's not what empathy is to me. Empathy is actively feeling that with them in that moment, even though you are not physically experiencing it yourself. And that's what I understood empathy to be when I was a tiny child. And that's what it feels like it is. It has to be. Otherwise, it's not a connection. Thanks for the time.
Janet Helms has 6 stages of racial identity that they've outlined that European Americans go through. The first one is contact, meaning that they have contact with a close Black friend or lover. And they have to see the mechanic of white people treating their friend or lover differently than them within seconds of their interaction with them. Do you get what I'm saying? So they interact with a white person. The white person treats them transactionally like a human being, white person to white person, and then turns and within seconds begins treating the Black person that they're connected to differently. The second stage is they literally touch the Black person's body and they feel indirectly racial stress. After that, the white person recognizes that they don't feel what Black people, brown people, and indigenous people are feeling, and they have the existential crisis that Bjorn was talking about. Disintegration. That's stage 3. i.e., heartbreak. Their heart cracks open and they find out, oh my God, you mean I've been living for 21, 22 years and my community of white people did not prepare me to have this experience of whiteness, which is that I don't feel it. I mean, I have not felt this before. So then they try and put themselves together by running to a black community or an Asian community or Samoan community to feel what black people have been feeling this entire time, but they don't believe that white people are feeling. And then they have the existential crisis of, I'm over here causing harm. And they want to, stage 6, find white people who can guide them on how to feel that they feel with black people towards other white people. Did that make sense?
Absolutely. And one of the reasons why it's so freaking hard is because whiteness is not an inclusive thing. It is a mutually exclusive thing. While blackness is inclusive and unifying, whiteness is by design exclusive, exclusionary, and divisive.
Hi, Dr. Joss. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good to see you here.
I appreciate you letting me hop in.
Of course.
Just hi, Dr. Josh. Just before Serge, it's the patriarchal system. It's the patriarchal system. Apologies. Thank you.
Oh, you
It's
don't
all
need to
systems of
apologize.
control, right?
Yes. Hi, Elizabeth.
Yeah, because
I will
I
say
see.
it's the
I'll just let you know, Josh. I consume a lot of your material, a lot of your videos. Okay.
Apologies.
No, and no, you're good. You're very good. So the thing that I struggle with is you're not the only one. I know that there are a number of psychologists and therapists who are putting forth these beautiful lighthouse bright messaging. And when other European Americans consume it, what seems to me to be the gap is they can apply it to self.
Uh-huh.
Okay? They sincerely believe in step 1. They can go on their healing journey. It's step 2 where that deficit of trust kicks in. They don't believe the other people in their lives can, let alone want to go on their healing journey. Okay? So it's not that we don't have the medicine. That's not been the problem. That's never been the problem. We know how to be human. Everybody, I mean, that's basic Paulo Freire. One, everyone knows how to be human. The thing is that we constantly dehumanize each other. And it's that choice to not dehumanize another white body person that I see on the anti-racism road that the great majority of European Americans seem to just stumble over because they're like, no, if black people just accept me, then I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be good, as if they're not bringing that capacity to dehumanize themselves with them into the other communities. So what's going on to where they sincerely don't believe that the other white people that they grow up around don't want to apply the medicine that they are applying to themselves?
So, if I may be so bold, I don't agree with you that they
Okay.
apply it to themselves either.
Oh!
Because
Yeah,
I'm thinking
facts.
back to what Bjorn and Serge said, right? You brought up that lovely idea of empathy versus compassion. And one of the sort of the models that I love to use, I talk about with my students all the time, is you have sympathy, empathy, compassion, right? 3, not 2. right? And empathy being that difference from sympathy is like, I feel sorry for you versus I feel what you feel. But compassion, right, moves us out of individualism and into the idea that I can have a shared experience with you, but also not be overwhelmed by you because I can't tell the difference anymore. And I think there is a good amount of sympathy and empathy in the world, but compassion is missing in an individualistic structure because you almost can't do it, right? And it's so built into the system. It's like even when you talk to like therapists, right, they talk about these ideas of like individuation, right, and setting boundaries, and it's still so individualistic in our field. How do I set the boundary healthily between me and everyone else
May I
instead of joining in the community?
may I ask
This
a
feels
quick
like it's going
follow-up
right
question?
back to the trust deficit all over again. It's the same. We're
Yeah,
we're afraid they're going to hurt us. We're afraid they're not going to do the healing journey. We're afraid they're not going to pay
hmm
us. We're afraid they're not going to show up. Like it's just continually not trusting people.
right. Well, how can I trust someone else if I'm here, you're there, and the resources are finite, and either I get them or you do, and I have to
Hmm.
divvy them out, right? If I use that model,
And I
right,
have to
we've
be in
already
control of
failed,
that.
right? So it's all, and then we end up in a fear-based system, right? Everything is based on fear of my existence.
Yep.
That's
But
facts,
because
Medusa.
we're
Medusa says no trust equals childhood trauma.
Yeah,
It's facts.
we're immersed in this system, right?
right.
And we were talking about it a little bit. We touched on it briefly earlier that being immersed in this system as a white-bodied person, not only
hmm
is it my observation that I do not live in a safe environment, it is also my personal individual lived experience that I am not surrounded by white-bodied people who are trustworthy.
hmm
And the dissonance happens when I learn about, in my childhood I learn about morality and integrity and character, and then I do not see those things being modeled in the world
Yes.
around me on a daily
Hmm.
basis. And so that creates dissonance, and that creates an emptiness and a confusion in our existence, because I'm being told all of these altruistic things, and I truly want to embrace and practice these beautiful altruistic things.
hmm
But there is no condition in the environment in which I exist where those things can be supported.
Right. It
Oh,
reminds It's like all the
oh.
couples that come into my office, and I'm like, we always talk about it, and everyone intellectually knows. They're like, if we could just change our relationship, if we both just treat each other like a little community, right? And then within 5 seconds, one of them will turn and say, okay, but they're going to go first, right? You put your gun down first, then I'll put my gun down.
Yep.
Dr. Josh, may I ask a question about the sympathy, empathy, compassion
Yeah,
dynamic real quick? Would you say that not necessarily, but compassion encompasses um, being able to feel for someone even when you can't feel what they're feeling? Like you
I
find
think it
yourself like
can.
I
I
can't
think
understand what you're feeling, but I feel for you that you're feeling it. Some
I
is that
think it can, in my mind at least. I think the idea is, I imagine like you have somebody comes up to you and you're like, "Oh, I feel so sorry for you," right? Sort of like that sympathy. It's very removed from a true connection. It's very individualistic. I think empathy starts to get to that community we keep talking about. I'm connected with you, but I think it can be limited because it's like you're sad, and then if you imagine somebody you care about's really sad, and now you're sad, and now everybody's just sad, and there's no sense of a core underneath it that holds us all up, that gives us strength. And I think compassion is the word I like to use to just refer to that base that we can all have, where I can say, I feel that sadness you have, and I can hold on to that without being so sucked into it that now I have to defend myself and
Correct.
I have to get back to me again.
Correct.
Right?
Medusa says they have conditioned fear in you, so you all would comply with white supremacy. That's facts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's
So
part of it, isn't it? Because whiteness is
Yeah.
conditional. And if you're not a good
Right.
white person, you lose access to the whiteness, right? As we've seen socially,
Right.
right? Who's been white and who's not been white over the years.
correct. And can go back to not being white at any given time. You can go back
Hmm.
to not being white. Welsh
Yeah.
can go back to being oppressed. Saxons can go back to being oppressed. Britons can go back to being oppressed. You
Hmm.
can easily lose it within the ethnicity. Romani, you can go back to being oppressed. Or you can marginalize yourself. See, you're choosing to be gay. You're choosing to be poor. See, you're choosing to not participate in our group and get access to these resources by helping us harm those people over there. Because if you just help us harm those people over there, then you can get access to this warm fire that we have going on by burning their bodies.
Yep.
Yep.
I think I'm paraphrasing something you told me, or maybe it was something you said in one of the classes, Kokai, that whiteness isn't really about the color of your skin. It's about your social currency. It's about the possession of your how much social currency you possess, and if you possess the top social currency, that's you're in the cast.
Yes, and then so you end up having to manage the moral pain of being in the group because you can see the harm that's flowing, you know. And if you aren't Lex Luthor, if you aren't the Kingpin, if you aren't Ted Bundy, and by Ted Bundy I mean the theory isn't that he was psychopathic. It's the theory now that he was like the Moon Knight and had multiple personalities, and we weren't ever talking to the one that actually murdered people because you got to be a young white woman in a certain condition for that personality to come forth. So he was never lying when he said, I didn't do it. That's the latest thing out. And when I saw that, I was like, good God, that makes so much sense. But I think of that as the normal white people I interact with, that I don't know which personality I'm dealing with. And it's completely dependent on the environment that I'm in. Because when they go home, when you see them go home and deal with their parents, they literally are a different person than when they're out playing with me.
Yeah.
I did a little too much there, I think.
No, you're right. Like
We went and visited
right.
my
Yeah.
parents on the farm, and Kokai got to watch me put on a completely different mask.
Mhm.
I think that's why so many white people have a hard time when they're grown into adults and they've moved away from their family and then they go back home and visit. That's why there's that disconnect and that conflict that they're fighting within themselves because you have to put on the little kid mode. I got to be Sarah the child, not Sarah
That's
the
a little bit.
independent woman.
Mhm.
That's a little
Room
bit
to
different,
perform,
though. That's a
Medusa says.
family
That is-
dynamic thing. That your family will always see you as the child you were in that family, regardless of where you've gone. Or that's a family dynamic thing that's tied into other things. Yeah.
We say it out
But
loud too. I am still the baby of the family. That is my moniker. I'm the youngest of 5 children. I am the baby of the family, and that is even when we don't use it in words. That is how the discussion flows among my siblings. I'm the baby of the family. I have the least valuable opinion.
What's up, Bajoran?
He went to go mute and he took off his visual. Go
I did it
ahead.
last time too.
So
It's easy to do. They're right close together.
It reminds me in the Buddhist practice I was talking about, they talk about altruism or unconditional love. The very, very basis of this that everybody should relate to is a mother and child, a mother breastfeeding a child, being an ultimate act of compassion or of altruism. And it struck me really hard when I encountered that, because I learned that I never had that from my mother. Like I never actually, like, every interaction with my mother was transactional. And I mean, she, even after that trauma I talked about, I became homeless because I couldn't provide enough of benefit to her life. And so that I became homeless and then became a Buddhist monk. And that's happened several times of trying to get the most basic kind of connection that I think a lot of other people or cultures have, but we've been conditioned to not have, where everything, even that fundamental relationship of parent and child, and that's why I think we're stuck as children, because we never have that trust and safety in those relationships. We try. I think with everybody else, we always, we know we can't have it, so we distrust them, and we always, when we're interacting with our parents, try to gain that base level of trust again. At least that's my understanding of it.
Wow. Wow.
I would say also, if you dare to step outside of what is expected, you will be completely ostracized. You will be pushed out. If I personally, because I left our family's religion of 7 generations, am now completely just this. I feel, God, my interactions with my siblings now are surface level. They're strangers to me and they are fine with it. They are just fine not caring about what's going on in my life. They are just fine painting me as a danger to their children, who they trusted me with fully 2 years ago. But now I'm a danger because I stepped outside of that line.
Mm-hmm.
My
Yeah.
community does not include my family. I
And
have
not
to find
ironically,
new community.
not
Yeah.
ironically, I'm sure you've heard this moniker before. What are we called? The black sheep of the family.
Mm.
It's not ironic and it is not coincidental that that moniker comes with that outcasting. I feel you.
Medusa's my new
Yeah.
mama down there. Thanks.
Yeah, it's amazing how easily we discard and disregard the people in our lives. I have been discarded by the community that I live in because of my stance on things, and I'm not afraid to stand up and be loud about it. My family, uh, mostly on my mom's side, talk about me like I'm insane, literally. But I keep showing up, you know? I keep showing up. I keep making them uncomfortable, but I keep showing up. Um, but it's difficult. It is difficult to go through. And that's part of the pain, is knowing that this is going to happen because they tell you it will happen. They warn you that it's going to happen.
Notice how
It's
much,
sanctioned.
yeah.
Go
And
ahead.
notice how much you need a sense of yourself in something bigger than yourself to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, all you have left is to do whatever you're told in order to have some place, to exist.
I was just thinking while Vix was explaining that, like that the fact that you do that and you do it openly and visibly and where others of us can see you do that, it it's sort of part of forming that collective power to do so. I mean, every battery starts with one electron, but like it is like an electrical charge. You have to have more electrons for there to be more voltage. And if electrons start being taken out of the circuit and out of the system, the charge diminishes. And eventually, it's just not strong enough to go and do that and to go and do that. So we need each other. We need our energy together to keep us all going back to our parents and saying you're wrong. And Bjorn, thank you again for sharing again.
Mhm.
I don't we don't have time to go into it, and this probably isn't it actually would be a great forum for it, but I want to collect some thoughts about it first, and I think I want to discuss it with maybe my therapist and maybe some of the eager members first. But I think you may have just taught me something about my childhood today, but in the sense that I did have that experience with my mother, and I've always realized that I've always thought I was loved unconditionally by my mother, like the baby of the family. I was the baby, and I think she knew I was going to be her last baby that she'd ever have. But my father was typical redneck father. He wasn't like like absent. He was absent without being absent. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But
I
it's
say
not that
that
I
all the time
never.
about white men.
Yeah, and it's not that I never had fun or had love. He showed me love. I knew that he loved me. We just didn't ever do anything together. And his, I won't say his love, but his compassion was absolutely conditional, 100% conditional and fickle. And so I think having both of those completely operate to the point of I have to the point where he could be abusive, not like hospitalize you abusive, but it happened. And having those two opposite ends of the spectrum at the same time for 17 years, 16,
You're right, Medusa. His
I
love was
fucked up.
transactional, and that dehumanized you. Yep. And that
I
has been my
fucked up.
experience with my parents. Absolutely.
I think
Absolutely.
that in order to operate in a segregated world, the level of compartmentalization that you have to create, back to that Moonlight character with the three different personalities, the amount of compartmentalization that you have to generate in order to stand there and watch someone that you interact with outside of work be harmed and told to walk around the building and walk in through the back, to sit there and have to watch them be abused by a police officer that you then have to defer to, smile, and thank for their service, to see news anchors lie to protect the business leaders in your community. You know what I'm saying? To have
Yes.
to and then still try and feel good about yourself, and there aren't therapists at that time who were prepared to be able to help you with that, or to deal with your community leaders and say there's such a gap. Back to what Ed was saying, there's such a gap between the altruistic value and what we're living and practicing, that I'm having a hard time grounding myself in any of this. And I don't want any parts of it, but this is also the only way that I can get access to any resources. It makes sense why in the 60s, the hippies were dropping out of white supremacy, out of their middle class life, out of the norms, to try and drop into what humanity was possible in our society for them. And then when that wasn't allowed because it got criminalized, remember that the hippie movement got criminal. This is something that they don't really like talking about. COINTELPRO wasn't just against the Black Panther Party and my parents.
Right.
When Kent State occurred and white people shot white people, their own children, we saw that with the Gaza protest when Colombian students at the the University of Columbia, when the New York police SWAT team was used against those rich white children, that's when the movement ended, because it was like no one is safe. We don't talk about that part enough, to where you almost have to make yourself insane to operate in this Babylon.
That
To
is
get any kind of
horrible,
currency so
Medusa.
that you can do any kind of business, to provide yourself relief by being able to purchase some marijuana, purchase some alcohol. And so then they wonder why so much LSD was being used and so many mushrooms were being used in the hippie movement. And that was just to try and create enough psychic space to where I can try and connect to you. Now, the more that I listen, the more I see that, like here in Oregon, Osho's mission was doomed from the beginning. It didn't matter how well he articulated solution, the people that he was giving it to couldn't do what he was asking them to do. So the only thing that it could connect to was sex, and it became a sex orgy that he rejected, that brought down his movement here in Oregon. But they couldn't do anything more than to just do like Nosferatu and just be appetite. Sorry for that metaphor, but this is blowing my mind. And there are people in the comment section that are being extremely filled with gratitude that we're creating this kind of space on TikTok, because this level of the deconstruction of, I feel trapped in a space where the only thing that matters is the mechanical functioning of my body. And everything else about me is just the people who gave birth to me don't give a fuck.
Yes, that's what it feels like. And it goes even out further. My community doesn't give a fuck about me. The world doesn't give a fuck about me. And then, well, we said the F word a couple times, so I'll probably get the live ban. But, then it's like, I don't care about me. Why should I care about me if they don't care about me? And it's like you're just a constant circle of looking for validation because you can't even validate yourself.
That's the design, though. That's by
For
design.
Sure. Absolutely.
Wow.
And that's the psychology of it too, right? If we can look all the way up at the top and see that no one really cares about us, then from the top all the way down to my parental structure, I can see that nobody really cares about us. And then my direct experience with my parental structure is that my support is transactional at best. So my parent structure doesn't really care about me. Then why would I even bother caring about myself?
Can we take that even further though? And when we talk about transactional, it's one-way transactional. There's nothing that I'm getting in return. When I go to my mom's and I talk to my mom, it's her taking from me. And then she may buy me something. And that's the thing that she's always done. Like, she'll hurt me. She'll say nasty things to me, all these things. And then she'll go and buy something to make up for it, instead of admitting that she did something wrong and trying to do better.
So with my family, we meet up every 6 months to a year, and nothing ever gets resolved. We have become masters of compartmentalization. We have to just basically forget all of the harms. And what that does is it means that even I can't care about myself, because if I cared about myself, I would want to fix those harms that they've done to me. But we can't, because the only other option is then we don't have a family at all. We have no support, even transactional support. So I think even if you're going to take it down, it doesn't go just to your parents, it goes to yourself. I mean, obviously we have to completely forget about caring about ourselves when we have to work 9 to 5 every day. we have to compartmentalize our personal lives from our work lives. And I think that just sets us up for this social conditioning of compartmentalizing all of the harms of society that we see, because that's just how our lives are, you know.
Jesus, Selassie, I man.
I'm going to have to drop down here in just a minute and get back to some work, but I would like to leave y'all with two thoughts before I go. Firstly, Kokai talking about us having to disconnect from society to survive. The only European American male in my entire plus 40 years of living who I can look back through our entire relationship through, and I can surely say he was there for me no matter what, always. He has been out of my life for about 25 years now because he has to live in 1998 in order to survive this world. He's a hermit. He's everything you're thinking when you think of the word, except for it's in a small town, not in the middle of the woods somewhere. And he lives willingly, knowingly, purposefully. He works to keep himself in the delusion. He blocks out information from outside to keep himself in the delusion. If I start to talk about anything that has happened since 1998, it physically hurts him, and he gets fidgety, and he has to start a different conversation. He has to, and he knows it. He acknowledges it. It is a willing psychosis that he has developed to survive.
I want to address Medusa's comment. Medusa says y'all's inner child needs the biggest hugs, and that is so true. It was one of the first things I did when I had the heartbreak that Kokai is talking about. Was I went out and it's so silly, the silliest things. I went to the dollar store and I bought one of those fake squishmallows and just hugged it all the time. Just hugged it. I carried it around. And it was just, I don't know, it was very comforting to me to have that little object. Even as a grown adult, I'm 50 at the time. I was about 45 or so. But just having that, it healed something in me. It healed something in me.
I don't want to stick on this subject because I really do got to go, and I got one more thing I want to share before I leave.
Okay.
I promise that'll be a quick one. But it would almost be easier if he had been unalived in an accident when we were 20 than it is to be able to go and talk to him and hug him and be with him, but he's not there.
Oh, poor
I
baby.
need my brother back.
Yeah.
And anyways, that kind of segues into the last thing I wanted to leave y'all with. I want us looking folks in the audience and in the room here to look at the folks that don't look like us in the audience in here, and I want you to recognize how strong and how compassionate they are being by not tearing us a new one, and how emotionally draining this has to be on Royal Star to provide this space for us. We are guilty right now of running to Black people for the knowledge, for the support.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the only way we're going to ever be able to do it for each other.
Yep.
So we have to acknowledge what we're doing. We have to live with that. and we have to build a way to not do that. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Thank
you
you,
so
brother.
much.
That was extremely vulnerable. Thank you, thank you,
Love
thank you.
you.
Appreciate it.
So, whoa! Sometimes I now starting to get what Bishop Tutu was doing during the Truth and Reconciliation trials. That there needs to be structured grieving inside of European American spaces, because you guys are walking around with like this pain body and you're pushing through. And what I read with Dr. Rita Walker in their book, The Unapologetic Guide to Black Mental Health, that as long as someone is functional, we sincerely believe they don't need help. And it's functional by our society, by the mechanical function of our society. So you can be walking around clinically depressed, but as long as you show up for work, no one gives a fuck. I mean, someone cares. I need to stop with that. But it's that level of,
It's the truth. Huh?
disconnect that's going on. And we sincerely believe that that person is okay, or that's the ideal. And it isn't, because we're walking around hurting all the time as if, yeah, I was a high functioning mess. Yes. As long as you can participate in capitalism, you're fine. And that's a lie from the pit of hell. Okay? Because you're walking around not connected to Mother Gaia. And as long as you're not connected to Mother Gaia, you're hurting yourself first. So now I need to break. We're at 90 minutes, and
Yes.
I need to go take a walk and touch some grass and feel some sunshine and drink some water and do some because this has been mind blowing. This is what we've tried to get to for 2 other attempts. And again, I noticed when we saw Black people beating up on white people, there were 120, 140, 160 people here to watch that. Okay? Which was white supremacy. Now, when it comes down to creating a healing space, we got 40 people here. We struggled to get and keep 40 people here to actually hear what is really motivating those 15 characteristics of white supremacy culture remaining intact. Okay? Remaining intact. So, Monday, after this pay-per-view weekend, potentially we can try this again, Vix, because
Okay.
obviously
I'll do it the right time this time.
No, you're good. Obviously, this is needed, and we're going to need to create this space over and over and over again, because it's also proven to me more than anything else that we need racial trauma centers in cities where white people can reach them physically and go to and say, I'm hurting right now and I barely got through work today. And I just need a corner where I can just fucking cry in, because the grief is real. And in Mama Africa, they believe that what we are dealing with isn't depression, it is grief. And grief is different from mourning.
Janine, you didn't show up late. I started it early by accident. All the white folks that are in here, the pale colored people, can we all take a collective deep breath together? Because we've done some work today and I appreciate you, but let's just take a deep breath together, please. Ready? I appreciate you all for being here, and I hope to see you again on Monday.
That's good.
Much love to everyone. Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Royal
Vic.
Star.
Thank you.
Thank
If
you.
y'all have a couple bucks, please send them Royal Star's way. He's been putting in a lot of work for us, so we want to appreciate him the best way we can.
Follow us for
All right, love
everything
y'all.
so we can reconnect.
Have a good day.
Thanks, guys.